If you are in this space to make money, leave. It is too hard. It is too difficult, too unpredictable to make money in crypto. Problem is that that is a game where 99% of the people lose their money. There is only one God, Bitcoin. Ethereum's biggest issue is the way they structure their ecosystem. They're being eaten alive by parasitic layer twos. But Cardano, the way it was built, is really an organic extension of what Bitcoin started. It's not hard to do scale. It's hard to do scale with decentralization.
Thank you very much, Charles, for your time. Thanks for being here. For those who don't know you, could you please explain who you are and what you're doing in the crypto space?
Well, very briefly, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been in crypto space about 15 years. Started with the education side of things because I didn't know anybody and never been an entrepreneur before. So I created the Bitcoin Education Project. And back then, nobody cared about Bitcoin. And I knew that because when you went to the conferences, you had to pay for your own coffee. And the conferences were like 10 people, and usually they didn't show up. And kind of watched the ecosystem grow from first generation cryptocurrencies to Ethereum and to Cardano. And now we're kind of in the middle of the third generation. And I've gotten to a point where I've been involved in pretty much most of the major things. Like my very first crypto project was BitShares. And there we were the very first algorithmic stablecoin index. That was back in 2013. So just way ahead of our time. And then Ethereum obviously was the 800-pound gorilla, which introduced the smart contract revolution. And then Cardano was kind of one of the first third-generation cryptocurrencies, where we introduced liquid non-custodial staking and the first provably secure proof-of-stake protocol, the first extension to UTXO, the first extension to color coins, and these other things. And it's been around for a long time. Now what I do is I run Input-Output Group, which is kind of took all the lessons that we learned from construction of Cardano, and we created a Cardano business unit. But now we have a venture studio connected to it as well, where we kind of launch pad new ideas. And we also take strategic investments and enhancements for things across the ecosystem. So we have many things like Book.io, and we took position in USDM and USDA and all these other guys. And we just have these relationships where we can watch stable coins grow, indexes grow, and cross-chain infrastructure grow. And we still kept our research and development arms. So we have one of the largest research groups in the world for cryptocurrencies. We collaborate with about 168 scientists. We have labs from Stanford to Tokyo Tech and everywhere in between. And we've written 240 papers. So we're one of the largest academic groups and over 10,000 citations. So we do a lot of engineering still. We work on core ecosystems like Cardano still. We do a ton of research. And then we also do the venture studio side. And that's just the crypto. And that's half my time. The other half the time is in synthetic biology and biotechnology. So I run a healthcare clinic in Gillette, Wyoming. We have about 13,000 patients, 40 providers. And then we do a lot of work with stem cells and hyperbarics there. And then on the synthetic biology side, do a lot of genetic engineering of plants for various things. And so that's a lot of fun too. Plus I run a bison ranch, as a spare time thing. Got a bunch of bison running around in Wyoming and pretty good at it. They haven't killed me yet.
Yeah. Your TED Talk is now about 10 years old, where you spoke about a decentralized future. 10 years is quite a long time, especially in the crypto space. Do you think we are on the right track?
Yeah. Unbelievable exponential growth. 10 years ago, nobody in the federal government even knew what the hell crypto really was. And then you got the president of the United States tweeting about it, and you got an all-of-government approach. So the world has embraced crypto. And now we're just trying to figure out how that fits in, because crypto changes the economic, political, and social systems of the world. And you have your financial and non-financial use cases for it. And this is going to touch everything. It's going to touch AI. It's going to touch supply chain. It's going to touch how media is produced. It's going to touch, how infrastructure is deployed, especially mega projects where you have coordination issue. Like, how do you build 16,000 miles of high-speed rail? Or how do you electrify a country like Burundi, where only 11% of the people have electricity? How do you get stable internet across the entire globe? And it's probably not a good idea to have one country control that, because then one guy can pull the lever, shut off the whole world's power or data. That's probably a collectively owned, cooperatively owned asset. So people are starting to realize that crypto has embedded within it the governance, oversight, and the scale required to be able to coordinate people in the millions to billions, which we didn't have previously. And don't underestimate the power of coordination. When it's a few thousand people coordinating, you have corporations. When it's 1 million people coordinating, you have the Apollo program, and we go to the moon. We have 10 million, 20, 30 million coordinating. You can change the entire world. You can do basically, anything you want to do. So when I did the TED Talk, it was very aspirational. We didn't have DeFi. We didn't have the stablecoin revolution. We were just starting smart contracts with Ethereum. We had all these dreams and visions about adoption. We didn't have any liquidity. We didn't have stable markets. And now in 2025, you have trillions of dollars in market cap. The real world asset revolution is going to be about 13 trillion coming in over the next 5 to 10 years. You have 24/7 global markets. You have regulatory frameworks that recognize this. You have the zero knowledge proof revolution, which is super powerful, and the scalability revolution, where you have the ability to process transactions at scale of billions of people. Plus you have autonomous agents, plus you have DIDs, you have all these things we didn't have before. And we built all that as an industry in 11 years. And there's now 550 million people worldwide using crypto. Back when I did that video, it was less than 50 million people that hadn't even heard of crypto, much less used it. So really incredible growth. And there's no technology in human history that's grown as quickly as this has grown, because it really is the only solution to globalism at the moment.
Since you've been here for quite a while, and since our channel is focused on beginners, could you please share your perspective about the evolution of cryptocurrencies, like from Bitcoin to Ethereum and to the next generation?
See, I tend to look at generations in terms of the problems that they're trying to solve. And that helps cognitively tell people where are we at. And it manages expectations as well. If you don't do that, what ends up happening is you kind of get lost, because it's really frustrating, if you solve this major problem and then people come in and say, well, I don't have that finished thing yet. And as a result, it's a total failure. Like quantum computing is a great example of this, where there's been exponential progress in quantum computing and all these amazing things have been resolved. But if your definition of success is, well, does the quantum computer work? Yes or no? Well, I can't solve a quantum scale problem yet. But guys, like today, 2025, look at this amazing progress we've made. And fusion is the exact same, where there's been these incredible, massive revolutions that have occurred. Then people say, okay, well, where's the fusion power plant making all the electricity? So generations help, because then it helps you orient yourself. Okay, as long as I solve that problem, then I'm making forward progress towards the big problem, which is ubiquitous and universal adoption. So the first generation was just about, is it possible to move value around like email for money in a decentralized way? Or do you have to have some third trusted party to maintain the ledger? And that was a known. Nobody knew. We started talking about it in the 80s in the cypherpunk movement. And David Chaum was a revolutionary guy back in the 90s, and he had DigiCash, but nobody had cracked that nut. And then Satoshi comes out of damn nowhere and comes up with this ability to create and transfer that value in a decentralized way. That was amazing. And here's the problem. You have a hedonic amnesia with these types of things. So the minute you solve it, you're like, wow. And then 2 years later is, whatever. So the iPhone was exactly like that. People saw the iPhone, and I remember navigating with MapQuest and printing out the maps and these types of things. And then suddenly you have this phone and you can like use Google Maps, and oh my God, it's amazing. It's so incredible. And then a year later, it's like, what else you got? So Bitcoin was the same. It was, wow, this is incredible. This is amazing. And then everybody's like, well, but wait a minute, I need programmability. It's kind of like when JavaScript came to the web browser. Before JavaScript came, you had websites, but you really couldn't do anything. You just read text and see like the little GIF picture with the flames and these things. It's like, that's your web. Then JavaScript comes, and then suddenly you got Facebook, you got YouTube, you got all these amazing experiences. You got web games, everything is awesome. Okay, well, Ethereum comes in the second generation. This is around 2014. And there, all of a sudden, you have programmability. And then you get DeFi and GameFi and all the FIs. You get NFTs, you get metaverses, you get these things. But people say, hang on a second here. Guys, it's not cost effective. You need predictable pricing. You need scale. You need interoperability, because all these different complex things have to talk to each other. And the most important part is you need governance. So very quickly after building the second generation, everybody started saying it needs to be better, faster, cheaper, talk to everything. And it has to behave like a centralized company, but be decentralized in terms of product. Because when you think about products, you have like the iPhone. Who makes the iPhone? Apple. So you as a consumer have an expectation that every year some guy in a black turtleneck is going to come out and be like, let me tell you about the iPhone. It's the most amazing thing. And you believe that. And say for Windows and Microsoft, you say, oh, the guy at Microsoft's going to come out and be like, oh, there's Windows 12 and there's Windows 13 and there's Windows 14 and it has all these new things. So who's the guy in the turtleneck for a decentralized protocol? Do you elect them? Do you just not do it like Bitcoin? And so it just stays at the same capability set forever? Or do you have like a governing council or these things? So governance is super hard because, like, is there any government right now working that everybody's happy with? If you go to throw a dart, you know, at a world map and it hits a country at random, do you think that the president of that country has 100% popularity? Maybe North Korea, but you get shot if you say no, you know? So decentralized governance, super hard. So that's the third generation, decentralized governance, interoperability, and scalability. And, you know, that's the big differentiator between Cardano and Ethereum. Cardano has an on-chain governance system. Cardano has a lot of stuff built in for interoperability, especially on the Bitcoin side. And Cardano also has, I'd say, protocols that are far more scalable at the layer one than Ethereum has at the moment. So, you know, third generation, that's where we're at. And those are solving problems along the way, because you don't throw away the decentralization of Bitcoin. You don't throw away the programmability of Ethereum. You don't throw away the scalability, interoperability, and governance. But as you go through these generations, the scope of things you can do with crypto grows. And it goes from, I just hold it and it sits there on the shelf. And one day me and Mike Saylor are going to go sail together on our yachts and have fun, you know. And then with Ethereum, you're like, I can have a crypto kitty. You know, I can have a really shitty video game where Vietnamese kids will make tons of money and play to earn, you know, or Filipinos or something. I don't know. It's like, I can have that. That'll work for me. And then with, you know, third generation, it's like, oh, now I have a DEX that actually operates at the speed and scale that a centralized exchange does. You see this with like Meteora or these guys. And so, oh, okay, now we got these things, right? Well, the fourth generation, which is coming, is solving the biggest problem, which is computational privacy and decentralized identity. These two components are required for all the real world assets, for the banks to come in, for legacy companies like Microsoft and Google to come in. And, you know, you bring a 10x in customers every time you do it. So when we were in the first generation, we were in the hundreds of thousands and millions. When we were in the second generation, we were in the tens of millions. The third generation, hundreds of millions. The fourth generation will bring the billions in. And then at that point, crypto's eating the world.
Wow. Before we're coming to the fourth generation, because we know that you are quite involved in Midnight, maybe one more question regarding the third generation. Cardano has, I would say, in some eyes, been seen as slow and maybe sometimes even too slow. But what would you say? How does Cardano differentiate from its competitors like Solana, like Avalanche, or all the other chains? And what makes it so special in your view?
You know, I get that question a lot, and I say, well, what don't you like? Do you like the fact that we've been running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 7 years straight? Or do you like the fact that we don't have $80 million in hacks every day? Or, you know, do you like the fact that we don't have these pump and dump meme coin scams? Do you like the fact that we've been around through multiple bear markets and bull markets and the ecosystem is strong? Do you not like the fact that year by year, every metric has grown inside the ecosystem? And also, where are you going to get your users from? You know, there's this war of the titans right now between Solana and Ethereum. And so Ethereum's biggest issue is the way they structure their ecosystem. They're being eaten alive by parasitic layer twos. It's absorbing all the transaction volume of the users, and they have no loyalty to the system. So that layer two can find a better deal somewhere else. It'll just uproot and go there and take the users and transaction volume with it. So it's like mosquitoes sucking the blood gradually out of you. You know, you get too many of them, you're not going to have a lot of blood left. Solana, their growth model has been really in the second act, because the first act was SBF and FTX and these things, and it really hurt them. They made a master stroke of a recovery, but really the recovery came with meme coins. They have to figure out how to grow beyond that part of the ecosystem and become something in their own right. But it's a good team, and there's very smart people there. So I think they have a good chance for it. But here's the thing. As they fight, everybody's ignoring that you have these giant sleeping titans, XRP and Bitcoin, for example, which when you combine them, the TVL of potential for that, it's about 4 times the market cap of Bitcoin, of Ethereum and Solana combined. So a lot of people are like, well, how do you beat Solana? How do you beat Ethereum? They say, well, okay, Have you ever tried to connect an account system to a UTXO system? Have you ever guys tried to connect the Ripple ledger to an account system? Not easy. But Cardano, the way it was built, is really an organic extension of what Bitcoin started. We have extended UTXO to UTXO. We have deflationary monetary policy. The smart contract model would have been what Satoshi would have written had Bitcoin script been more expressive. So we're really thinking holistically and saying over the next 5 to 10 years, the largest growth of users' liquidity in TVL is going to be coming from Bitcoin DeFi and Ripple entering the DeFi world and bringing the institutions with it, because RWA is a multi-trillion-dollar marketplace. So we're in the nexus point in that where we actually have the best technology to communicate with those guys, and we're the most decentralized and secure to do so. And you don't have to violate the security model of XRP or Bitcoin to enable that. So when I look to the horizon, I say, okay, that's where the puck is going to go. And a lot of people are going to chase that. We already have a lot of great data. Like when they just slowly started opening Bitcoin DeFi after Taproot, there's already $5.8 billion in TVL. And almost no one's trying. And there's a terrible user experience right now for it. So when the user experience gets good, everybody's going to do that. And it's not going to be possible or easy to do in the Solana context or the Ethereum context. So that's where we focus most of our effort. As for we're too slow, well, we did all the peer review and the stuff, and that's what we got the liquid non-custodial staking for. These other things. It's very easy to get higher TPS. The hard part is get higher TPS preserving your decentralization. I can always run something on an Amazon server and take your best BFT protocol off the shelf and be like, there you go. It's 10,000 TPS. Oh God, I wish we could have figured that out. It's like, come on, guys. We've written 240 academic papers. And we have 168 scientists. We're pretty good at this. Okay. We invented half this stuff. It's not hard to do scale. It's hard to do scale with decentralization. So the route that we took, we feel very confident in that, because there's 3 different dimensions that you have to preserve. One is on the layer 1, as you scale the protocol, you want to keep the same amount of people participating in consensus or more. Or otherwise, you end up having like 5 nodes that process all your transactions, and then you're completely centralized. Ouroboros Leos is our approach there. It took us 6 years to write that protocol, and now we're in the prototyping phase of it. We're starting to turn on those elements. And over time, stage by stage, they turn on. But what the data is showing us is we're not consensus constrained. We're network constrained, which means that protocol just organically gets faster forever. As network connections get faster and you get more optimizations there, you get higher TPS rate. The second thing is more efficient utilization of your on-chain traffic. And so UTXO is awesome for this, because what you can do is one transaction can be many things at the same time. And this is something, if you come from Ethereum land or Solana land, you don't understand. You're thinking sequentially, and you're saying, no, that transaction's the Uniswap transaction, or that transaction's this thing or this thing. Well, let me show you guys something. It's like I can tell you or I can show you. So there's a really cool website here I'd encourage everybody to go to, and it's called eutxo.org. And let me go ahead and bring this up for you. So I'll share my screen. That's your window. All right. So if you guys just go ahead and add that, you can see it.
Yes.
All right. You see the screen?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So this right here is a real-time view. And it's always dangerous to do these demos because you actually get to see the Cardano network real-time. And what this is basically doing is it's showing what's going on. So these aren't blocks, these are transactions. So this one transaction here has 16 NFTs issued, something on SNEC, which is that's probably a liquidity aggregator. There's several ADA transactions here. An NFT got moved. Whatever the hell this cock thing is. This is one transaction. So you don't have TPS in Cardano. You have TPT, transactions per transaction. So this is an infinitely scalable model because your transaction graph can get larger, your output set can get larger over time. And all these things that are happening can go from individual atomic events to proofs. That's what these scripts are. And those proofs can represent tons of things. So if you pick the right model for this, especially if you construct this model in a way, like right here, a book just got issued. So somebody just bought a book and they moved a bunch of ADA. Look at that. And that's a real-time view of the network, and you can see the utilization. And so sometimes the blocks are small, sometimes they're completely filled. So this is kind of a light day, but this model here is infinitely scalable. When you think about it, because you can always make more outputs. You can always fill the outputs with proofs that represent batches of things. And then you can layer on something called intents. So what you can do is you can create kind of pseudo transactions, and you can put all the transactions in the gate to improve the optimization of those types of things. Then the third thing is off-chain. So do you have a story where the things that happen off-chain are the same as the things that happen on-chain? In the accounts model, the answer is no. You have to spend enormous overhead trying to figure all that out. But in the UTXO model, you have a property called isomorphism, which means the answer is yes. So you can do what they did with Lightning, but what Vitalik wanted to do with Plasma, and you can have those be state channels. And that means you can have, on a DApp by DApp basis, potentially infinite scale there. And we demonstrated that with Hydra Doom. So we took the video game Hydra, we took every frame of the video game, and we made it a transaction. You know, it's like 24, 36 frames a second, whatever Doom was capped at back in the day. You have multiplayer, people play. And that network of Hydra heads was able to do 1 million transactions per second, which is about as fast as you'd ever need. Visa's operating at 50,000. So those three things together, a good layer one scaling solution, a more efficient utilization of how you program and batch things using proofs and intents and the UTXO graph, and then combine that with Hydra for having a really good layer two story that is non-parasitic, because Hydra doesn't have a token. It's just a state channel on a DApp by DApp basis. That's how you achieve organic scalability. And by the way, all of that preserves 50% Byzantine resistance. So you solve the blockchain trilemma when you think about these types of things. So you can say it or you can see it. Anybody can go and watch the network live. In fact, one of these days I'm going to put like a computer monitor on my wall and have UTXO just running 24/7. So it's a live pulse of the Cardano network. But all that technology is foundational and it's been built to scale. So you just turn on those capabilities over time when the wave of Bitcoin DeFi comes in and the XRP stuff comes in and these other things come in. And also because we have the privacy stack with Midnight, we're the dominant platform, I'd estimate, for real world assets. You know, because who wants to have a stable coin where every transaction is tracked forever? So when you went and OnlyFans and subscribed to that cat girl, like your future girlfriend 10 years from now will know that, you know, because that's on the chain forever and you cannot unwind it. Maybe, just maybe, we have a little bit of privacy, so our cat girl preferences are not known, or whatever the hell your weirdo preferences are. So, you know, probably good to have private stable coins, right? Same for DEX transactions. You know, do you want people to know when you're applying for a job that, you know, you bought porn coin or cock coin or whatever the hell, you know, and you were a speculator there and you made $300,000 on, you know, this OnlyFans clone? Maybe not, you know. And so, but the problem with blockchain is all that's known. The minute that you link your account to your identity forever, everything you've ever done is known. So maybe, just maybe, we need to have a private smart contract layer to sort all this stuff out for the retail side, but also for statutory requirements. We have BSA, GDPR, we have HIPAA. You have all these government mandates about the privacy of people's data and financial transactions and medical records and these other things. Cardano has a dominant stack for that. We invented something called Kachina with Midnight, and we're bringing it to market this year. And that's something that we can, through hybrid apps, bring the entire cryptocurrency space: Ethereum, Solana, Bitcoin, Cardano itself, XRP, and so forth. And that's going to be the dominant side for real world assets when you look at it. So I tend to look horizontally and say where we need to be at in 5 years. So when Dan and I created BitShares, we're like, yeah, algorithmic stablecoins and DEXs are going to be a big thing. We were directionally right. We just mistimed the market. We were too early. When Vitalik and all the rest of us got together for smart contracts, we were right place, right time. We got that really, really good. Cardano, you know, we were great. The problem was that we were too slow to market with smart contracts, and the expectations were too high for the smart contract side of Cardano. So when we launched it, we lost our momentum. We went from $100 billion market cap down, and Solana was able to pick that up. And, you know, kudos to them. They're very competitive people. But the thing is like all the complaints about Cardano smart contracts have been resolved. Oh, I have to know Haskell. No, you don't. You can write in TypeScript. And Rust and other things. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, it's really, there's no tooling. Oh, there's amazing tooling now. I was like, you know, but, you know, how do I issue an ACIDs? Oh, it's easy to do. It's all that stuff has been solved. Because it takes 3 to 7 years for a programming language to really, and for a programming ecosystem to really get maturity. And people forget how horrible it was to write Ethereum smart contracts when Ethereum launched. And now it's easy because people built all that tooling. So it takes a little bit of time here, and we're early for Bitcoin and DeFi. And through the BitVMX relationship with Fairgate and what we're doing with kind of making Aiken a ubiquitous language across the UTXO world, I think we can capture a lot of that share. So it'll be the right place, right time over the next 5 to 10 years.
Let us dig deeper into the fourth generation cryptocurrency. Can you tell us more about Midnight?
So private smart contracts and selective disclosure like peanut butter and jelly, you need them both. If you don't have them both, then you have a situation where you can't do anything useful. Because, oh, but I want privacy forever. What if you're a business? Do you want, as a CEO of your business, your HR director or your finance team or your technology team to hide stuff from you? Well, no. Okay, well, don't they have to disclose these things to you? Yeah, well, that's a selective disclosure regime, right? Oh, yeah, that's a good point. You know, or if you're a company issuing a stock, maybe you want all the trading to be private, but you'd like to know who your shareholders are because you have to communicate with them for purposes of voting or dividends or whatever. Okay, well, that's the selective disclosure to you. Well, okay, or it's a supply chain. So you would like to keep supply chains private because Apple doesn't want Samsung to know, how many memory chips or screens they're buying or these things for competitive reasons. But Apple kind of does need to track its stuff in its supply chain, right? So that's selective disclosure. So it's peanut butter and jelly. They come together. The problem is no one's really figured out how to do that at scale in a decentralized way using standards for all blockchains. And that's what we solved with Midnight. We figured out how to do that. We have multi-resource consensus. And so we can look at many chains at the same time. And we have this chain abstraction model that allows hybrid applications. And so when you're on Ethereum and Solana and Bitcoin and Cardano, you can extend your apps to have private smart contracts and selective disclosure. And you pay in your underlying currency. So you pay in Ether or you pay in Bitcoin, you pay in Sol, you pay in ADA. So it feels like it's part of the family. But under the hood, all this auto magic stuff is happening. You don't need to know about that. Midnight's just solving that problem for you. And so whether it be you want to put KYC and AML and have a regulated DEX, or you want to have a regulated asset, or you're a musician and you don't want people knowing how much royalties you get for when people buy your music, or you're trying to build a carbon tracking system, but people don't want to reveal, where, competitive advantages or disadvantages, or whatever the hell it is. You need privacy in these types of things. And the regulators also want to regulate the system, but how do you do that on a global basis? You have to bake the regulatory regime into the transactions themselves. Otherwise, you have to pick a winner. The SEC in the United States has been historically the winner, and they've been sculpting the global crypto market, scary Gary under Joe Biden. And that doesn't work for anybody. It doesn't make any sense to anybody. So that's why we built Midnight. And what's really cool about it is that there's no ICO. I didn't take any venture capital for it or any of these things. We're just doing a distribution via basically an airdrop. 8 different chains and 37 million people. And we'll have an announcement pretty soon about tokenomics for it. And so everybody gets to play with it. Everybody gets to use it. And it becomes ubiquitous infrastructure that solves the last mile problem for cryptocurrencies. Once this is done, there's no barrier anymore for the next billion people to come into the cryptocurrency space, because you can preserve and protect your data, your privacy. You can preserve and protect your transaction history, but at the same time, it can fit into both a legacy context and also to a Web3 context.
I still remember one of your first whiteboard videos. Was Midnight already in plan, like back in the days, or was it something that evolved over time when you saw like the new problems that arose?
The problem with Midnight was that I was skeptical about the cryptography for a long time. So Midnight can't be done in a vacuum. You need to have zero knowledge proofs, and you need to have recursive snarks, and you need to have all this amazing technology. And in 2014, when I did the TED Talk, and in 2017, when I did the whiteboard video, we were aware of these techniques, but they were always like mythical, like fusion or something. It's off in the distance. It's like, well, this stuff has to be solved. But what happened was that there was a revolution, and the Zcash guys were really one of the first to do this. And they kudos to them for how hard they pushed it. And that revolution basically created a reality where the technology caught up. And suddenly we didn't have to have some magic MacGuffin like fully homomorphic encryption or some strange multi-party computation or just trusted hardware. We actually could do this without those very heavy components. The other thing is that the AI revolution is what it's starting to do is it's starting to give us these acceleration cores that are quite compatible with certain techniques that are in the zero knowledge world, because zero knowledge proofs and things were always like 1,000 times too slow. Well, wait a minute here. If we get a 10x in speed because of mathematical improvements, but then we run this on 100 cores instead of 1 core because it's running on a graphics card or an AI core, well, then suddenly it's the same speed as crypto. So the speed is catching up, the computation is catching up, the algorithms are catching up, and so Midnight's like the real deal. And what this means is that means all the things that we assume were going to be off-chain, trusted, running on servers can now start being brought into the Web3 world. And it's really last mile. And also it's the only way to solve the interoperability problem. So we kind of sort of knew we'd need something like this, but we didn't know what it would look like when we wrote the first Cardano roadmap. Because the thing is that I'm not going to watch every blockchain in the world. If I am in Ethereum land and I get a Bitcoin transaction, how do I know it's a real coin and it hasn't been double spent? Or vice versa. I'm in the Bitcoin world and I get an Ethereum transaction. How do I know it's a real coin and it hasn't been double spent? Well, one option is just for me to have a full node of both blockchains, and then I can check it. Okay, so I'll come back in a week and a half after you're done syncing your full node on both sides, and then we will know if that's real or not. That's not going to work, man. Not in the age of like TikTok and I have 11 seconds of your attention. It's one-click installs and things like that. There's no consumer reality for that. Also, what if it's a vending machine? What if it's an ATM? What if it's a cash register and there's a point of sale system or whatever? It's like, what? They're going to be like, thank you for your purchase. Come back in a week and a half and pick it up. It's like, no, that doesn't work. So what do you need to do? You need to have the transaction go with a proof, that proof on the wire. And the proof gives you enough information that you can verify that those coins are real and they haven't been double spent. Pretty simple. What is that proof? Ooh, that's the hard part. There's a lot of opinions in these types of things. And I think what we've done with where the industry is going, where Midnight is going, is we've created an engine where we can start getting a universal solution for this type of conversation. And there's great companies like Pi Squared and others that are also working on it. And there's other competitors like Aleo, which just got 300 million in funding from Coinbase Ventures, and I think it was A16Z and these others. And there's Espresso, which was Benedict Bunz's venture, and so there's a lot of competition. Starkware is kind of the 800-pound gorilla there, along with ZK Sync. So it's nice to have neighbors because you're kind of in the right neighborhood when you have neighbors. And these are not like nice to have; they're indispensable for scalability purposes and for cross-chain communication. And it's the only way we can actually have the chains talk to each other and have a cell phone have the same level of security as a full node.
Besides scalability and governance is also an important feature for blockchains. I know you had the Constitutional Convention in Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please explain what decentralized governance even mean and why is it so important in your opinion for Cardano, but also for the future of blockchain technology?
Somebody has to be in charge. And either you pick a guy, it's like you or there, you run the system. Or you just run anarchy, and if you have anarchy, nothing gets done. So how do you create a synthetic centralization? So it behaves as if there's a corporation, it behaves as if there's a CEO, it behaves as if there's a president, but it's actually under the hood decentralized and fluid. That really was the big design challenge for Cardano, because if you have centralization, you have all the benefits of it. You have fast movement, you're efficient, you're making good decisions in many cases, and you're able to be competitive with centralized products. But if you're decentralized, you can preserve your integrity of your system, you're resilient, there's no key man risk, no macroeconomic event can happen, like a war breaks out and the governing company happens to be in that country. Let's say you're a Ukrainian cryptocurrency, for example, and you're in Eastern Ukraine, and maybe that worked great in 2016, but then, Russia invades, and then suddenly, half your employees are fighting in a war. So obviously that's going to have a huge disruption on the command and control, the roadmap, and the code writing of that cryptocurrency. Decentralization means that, well, that would take that node offline. All the rest of the world is still running, so the cryptocurrency is still making forward progress while that event happens. So both sides have huge benefits. Alone, without any coordinating function, they get brittle. In the case of decentralization, nothing gets done because there's no forward progress. Like, who makes the decision? Like, we should really adopt this new thing. Like when quantum computers come, Bitcoin's got to figure out, how do we become post-quantum? Who's going to make that call? How are you going to converge to it? Is it hash-based, lattice-based, or something else? Well, what's the guy for that? It's going to be enormous. It'll be 8 years of conversation. That's how long it took for Taproot. Even though everybody agreed Taproot was a good idea. Brought Mast in, brought Snorsigs in. I remember they were talking about stuff like that in 2014 when I was engaging with Blockstream. It took till 2021 to get that integrated into the system. It's very hard. Now, on the other hand, because change is hard, a lot of outside people say, well, because change is hard, I'm not going to get rug pulled in a system like this because nobody's going to come in and fuck with it and steal my money and these types of things. Whereas centralization is like one guy can be an asshole, take all your money, shut the whole thing down. You know, so they're both sides are brittle. So what we try to do with Cardano governance is have our cake and eat it too, where we created synthetic centralization. So you create delegated democracy, you know, constitution, you have liquid democracy. So there's kind of a governing class, but it's fluid enough that it can regress to a decentralized state whenever a crisis occurs or things like that to basically insulate the system. And constitutions are hard to change and they regulate the behavior. So there's checks and balances. It's a tripartite governance model. People can delegate to a DREP, so it's liquid democracy there, and it's a constitutional republic on the constitutional committee side. They vote for people there, and there's no executive function, so there's no president. And very unusual in a government. Usually you have a tripartite model of a judicial branch, executive branch, and legislative branch. We remove the executive branch from it because we don't think we need it. So it's a chimera of a governance structure. It took 2 years to put together, and we had people from 100+ countries participate. The Constitution was written by people from 50 countries, 18,000 participants. We had a constitutional convention actually in Buenos Aires last year, and we just got it ratified on chain. 3 million people across the network. That was a hell of a lot of work. Coordinated people get it done, but we got it done, and we got it done on schedule. You know, so it shows we're moving like a company would, but we're doing it in a very decentralized way. So that's basically Cardano. And what it does is it has 7 different areas of governance it's involved in. But the most important is the hard fork. So the upgrades of the system, the roadmap setting. So basically, where do we want to go on an annual or greater basis, and the budget. Cardano has about $1.5 billion of on-chain money, depending on the price of ADA. And the on-chain government controls that and actually does annual budgets. And so just like any governing system, we're right now in the budget conversation, and boy, it's fun. A lot of people have strong opinions about stuff, but you know, on an annual basis, you converge, and then all of a sudden you look a lot like a company. You have leadership, you have execution, you have delegated authority, you have institutions, you have a budget. But wait a minute, it's completely decentralized. If any one of these actors behaves badly, they can easily be removed from the system without destroying it. And no one party has enough power to take over the system. And at the end of the day, it still preserves its principles. It's a deflationary monetary policy like Bitcoin. It's getting more decentralized year after year as measured by the EDI. So, you know, it has all those nice decentralized characteristics. I think this is the single biggest USP of Cardano over everything else, because everything else is like awesome when it's invented, but in 18 to 36 months, it's old news. You can adopt it. Like, remember ChatGPT when it first came out? You're like, wow! It's like, is it impressive anymore? It's ChatGPT, whatever. And there's 4,000 versions of it. Now everybody's doing all this stuff, right? And they're everybody gets excited not about ChatGPT. They get excited about DeepSeek because it made it 1,000 times cheaper. They weren't excited about an enhancement of a capability. They were excited about the capability being cheaper. That's telling you where you're at inside that curve of adoption. So you really don't want to bet your farm on you have this amazing innovative thing. It gives you a short-term advantage, but the real advantage is your governance system, your change management system, your product roadmap system, your ability to adapt to changing market conditions. I'm old enough to remember that Microsoft was a superpower. Then they had bad leadership and they missed Google, Facebook, and the iPhone. And they looked like they were a dying, ossified, bureaucratic company. And then suddenly Satya Nadella comes in and now they're a $3 trillion Leviathan and they may actually win the AI fight. And I'm old enough to remember when Intel had 95% of the market share and they were actually talking about buying NVIDIA and they decided not to for antitrust reasons, but they almost did. And now Intel is smaller than AMD, a company that they nearly drove out of business. AMD was worth $2.5 billion. Now it's got a $250 billion market cap. Intel sits around 100. And AMD now has a majority of the market share. Shit changes so fast in technology. Why did AMD win and Intel lose? Governance. Lisa Su is an awesome CEO and she does great work. Why did NVIDIA win and Intel didn't? Governance. Intel had every ability to build AI chips and get involved in the GPU world, and they chose not to. And NVIDIA had great leadership, you know, and why did Microsoft fail and succeed? Governance. Steve Ballmer was a crummy CEO and he missed a lot of stuff. Satya Nadella is a great CEO. So that's really in technology. When you look 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, what differentiates things, and any cryptocurrency that's created a system to elevate good leadership up and mute and push down bad leadership, those are the ones that are going to be around in 5 years or 10 years, because you'll always have the right strategy eventually. And if people aren't leaving and they're coming, it's like you'll win. That's axiomatic.
You mentioned Bitcoin quite a few times. When is Bitcoin DeFi coming to Cardano? And can you explain it in simple terms? how that is even possible.
Yeah. Well, here's what I learned from my time at the Bitcoin Foundation, the Bitcoin Education Project, and being around when Bitcoin was less than $1. In Bitcoin terms, there is only one God, Bitcoin. There is only one token, Bitcoin. And so if you try any deviation of that script, you're dead. So Bitcoin DeFi, you have a wallet, you have a toggle or a button or something called DeFi mode. You click it and you've turned your Bitcoin on to do DeFi stuff. You do DeFi stuff. You get a yield, you do lending, you buy some stuff with it, whatever. You pay your fees and you get paid in Bitcoin. And then when you're done, you click the button, Bitcoin DeFi turns off. Now, under the hood, what's happening? You have two networks connected or more to each other, in this case, Bitcoin and Cardano. There's a trustless bridge that relies on the security long-term of Bitcoin itself. You go from Bitcoin to another network. It's wrapped in that network, and that network has intents. So in this case, it's Babel fees on Cardano. So when you pay your Bitcoin fees, you're paying wrapped Bitcoin, and under the hood, it's being exchanged for ADA or whatever that thing is, but that's been done by a third party. You don't see any of that. It's like going to Barbados, you buy some coffee, use your credit card, you're paying in dollars. They're being paid in a different currency. You don't think about that different currency because automagically something's happening inside the system. And when you disable DeFi mode, you're consolidating all your wrapped Bitcoin, moving it back to Bitcoin. As long as the governing function has a good UX, you pay your fees in Bitcoin, and the security ultimately relies on Bitcoin long-term, it's good. Any deviation from that blueprint, you're going to fail inside that model, because Bitcoiners have already been exceedingly clear. There is only one way to secure their assets. It's proof of work. And there's only one currency that matters. It's Bitcoin. Now, they're also clear that they like money. And so do you want your Bitcoin to have no yield or a 10% yield? I'd probably think a 10% yield, right? So if there's DeFi products that offer those capabilities, why should Bitcoin be excluded just because it can't talk to those types of systems? So that's really the magic of Bitcoin DeFi, is to enable a button at the wallet level that gives you that user experience reality and make it seamless and fluid. Now, under the hood, enormous amount of stuff has to be done. First, they need a development model for this. And so BitVMX does that with RISC-V, and it takes RISC-V assembly and transpiles to Bitcoin script to run Taproot. And what we're doing is we're adding a UPLC converter, so you can compile UPLC to BitVMX, so that in languages that support UPLC, like Aiken and Plutus, which are the development languages of Cardano, they can compile then, and you can use Aiken then to write Bitcoin applications and Cardano applications. So one language run everywhere. It's like Node.js to Node, for example, JavaScript to Node.js, for example. So there's that. And then there are a lot of recursive stuff, the snark stuff and zero knowledge stuff for the trustless bridging mechanism for it. And then usually what you want to do is layer it with some other things for a better user experience in the short term. So you have eventual reliance on the Bitcoin security model, but short-term reliance on a different model. The reason you do that is user experience, because you don't want to pay high fees, and you don't want to wait an hour for a transaction to basically clear. So the consumer can make that decision. And if it's a large amount of Bitcoin, you take that decision away from them because it's too much value at risk. If it's a small amount, then you just default to a different bridge mechanism. But as I said, it's not very complicated. It's infrastructure. We know how to build this type of infrastructure. There's a lot of people like Sergio Lerner, who invented Rootstock, and he was the guy who figured out how many Bitcoin Satoshi had. He's been in the space since like 2011. They know how to do this stuff, And Taproot was a gift from God. It's a glass of ice water in hell, Mast and Snorsigs and these other things. They give you enough to actually run zero knowledge proofs on Bitcoin. I bet at a very high cost and very slow. Like takes an hour to fully settle, and many hundreds to thousands of dollars per transaction. But you only need to do that maybe on a daily basis for a batch of many, many, many things, as opposed to every individual event. And then once you've opened this up, it's the single largest TVL event in the history of the industry. They barely kind of sort of just slightly opened it. TVL is already $5.8 billion. Bitcoin sitting multi-trillion dollars, and it's mostly institutional and nation state led at this moment. So you mean to tell me that BlackRock doesn't want to make 10% on their Bitcoin or 5% on their Bitcoin? Even if they don't want to, what if Grayscale does? What's the more attractive investment product for your ETF? So there's going to be a network effect that drives people into it. And then you'll wake up and there'll be $200-300 billion in TVL. Why Cardano? Well, they're UTXO or extended UTXO. So the development model is basically the same, and the logic of how to build apps, the logic of how to build these bridging mechanisms is the same. And we have a much superior way of doing zero knowledge cryptography inside these bridges. And also just we're philosophically compatible. We're deflationary, they're deflationary. Ouroboros is like the proof of stake version of proof of work. The way Ouroboros was designed, we actually formalized the security of Bitcoin first and then figured out how to build a POS that was the same. And it was called the GKL model. We published it in 2015. It's actually our most cited paper. I think there's over 1,000 citations on it. So philosophically, everything is very similar in Cardano to Bitcoin. And development-wise, things are very similar. When you go to Bitcoin or Solana, there's a security gap there. And almost certainly you have to introduce a lot of trusted third parties to make the user experience work very well. So, and also if there's one universal language for UTXO DeFi, it means as a developer, you have a turnkey experience to deploy onto Dogecoin and Litecoin and to Bitcoin and to Cardano at the same time. So it's kind of the nexus of all those things when you really think about it. So what's nice about it is you don't steal a single user from Ethereum or Solana. In fact, you gain users from them. Why? Because they want to get access to the Bitcoin DeFi liquidity. So you just have to build bridges on both sides. And so the easiest way for Solana to talk to Bitcoin is through Cardano. And the easiest way for Ethereum to talk to Bitcoin will be through Cardano as well. A direct integration's hell for these types of things. And we have a way to bridge that. We even have a way of combining the Lightning Network and our layer 2 network called Hydra. We call it Lightning Hydra. I love that name because I can create a cool logo and it'll be really fun. But, it just makes Lightning better. So real excited. Yeah, a lot of it's wallet level magic. A lot of it's cryptography, and a lot of it just relies on Taproot at the end of the day. And BitVMX did most of the heavy lifting. You got to kudos to the Fairgate guys. If you go to fairgate.io, you can kind of read about it. And what we're doing is just figuring out how to fix all the broken windows and cross the T's and dot the I's to get this turned on. So it's a gradual thing, and it's a DApp by DApp level thing. So basically, as you create the network-to-network communication, then you have a collection of dApps that support wrapped Bitcoin on Cardano for DeFi mode. And at that point, they get utilized. But that's pretty simple and straightforward. So we're creating a network of partners like Fluid Tokens and many, many others in the Cardano ecosystem basically take that on. And, it's just easy to use. And then when you're done, you just click the button. Pretty simple, right? Click a button on, click a button off. Pay transaction fee in Bitcoin, pay transaction fee in Bitcoin. It's like it feels like we're doing the right thing, if that's my user experience.
What is the timeline for that? Is it happening this year, next year, in 3 to 5 years?
No, this year. This year, some of the first generation stuff will come, and the really sexy, awesome stuff will probably come late this year to next year. But it's not a long horizon thing because at the end of the day, a lot of the core infrastructure is out of R&D. If we had to wait on Taproot, that would be problematic. But Taproot came out in 2021, and there's already a pretty good Bitcoin DeFi ecosystem. Like Stacks is there, and Babylon is there, and these other things are there. So there's a lot of neighbors. So you always ask, like, what's your neighbors to learn about your neighborhood? And our neighbors are pretty good, with that. So a lot of it's just, can we get the wallet support and the other things? Because I own my own wallet, I have Lace Wallet. I can kind of guarantee it because I can just go to Brandon and say, like, you will do this. And he's like, yes, sir. And he goes into the basement and he's like, oh God, how do I figure this out? And we did a few things to accelerate it. For example, a lot of the Bitcoin DeFi stuff was invented in Argentina. So we went to Argentina and opened an office in Argentina. So I actually rented some real estate. We hired 7 Argentinian developers. We brought them in, and they're now coordinating, cooperating to build a cell phone app for our wallet, but then also to work with Sergio's team at Fairgate to kind of accelerate that. We also started looking at the cryptography of these two sides, and we're trying to clean up some things to make it a little bit more secure and more heavily rely upon the Bitcoin security model.
Nice. Beyond everything you just mentioned, what are the other key milestones you see for Cardano in 2025?
Well, I mean, if midnight and one of the largest launches in the history of the space is not enough for you, and the turning on of the largest decentralized government in the history of our industry is not good enough for you, and Leos solving the blockchain trilemma is not good enough for you, and Bitcoin DeFi is not good enough for you, we also still don't have the hacks, and we also have been up for 7+ years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and our biggest governance crisis is, the foundation and I don't get along. It's somehow Cardano runs, and somehow things get done with Cardano. Cardano is not flashy. People in this industry, they've gotten addicted to being flashy, and You know, there's always this sexy, magical announcement that's going to come. Cardano is the slow and steady, methodical thing. And what makes Cardano special is we don't give up territory. Even if we take an inch a day or a foot a day or a yard a day, it doesn't really matter. Or for you in the bizarro metric world, you know, a centimeter a day, you know, meter a day, kilometer a day. It doesn't matter because we don't give up territory. And so you come back in 5 years, we're massively bigger than we were the 5 years before. And that's what makes Cardano really special. We have survived every market downturn you can basically imagine. Remember the ICO mania of 2017, followed by the long, brutal bear run. Remember the hyper speculative NFT madness of 2021 and all the madness. They're followed by the collapse of Luna and FTX and Joe Biden trying to murder all of us in a bathtub and Scary Gary living the storm drains. Come down here, Georgie, you know, suing everybody. We survived that. And we're still here. We're Johnny fucking live a lot. Cardano doesn't go away. And that's what makes us really special is when you come to the Cardano ecosystem, you say it's well-governed. It's based on solid science. So the science isn't going to screw you. It's amazing engineering. And there's good people there. There's more than 24 engineering companies that are now doing this. Client diversity coming. So if you don't like weird, strange Haskell in the basement, well, there's a Rust client people are working on. There's a Go client people are working on. There's a TypeScript client people are working on. That's pretty good. And we've solved all the major problems. Whether it takes us a year to turn on that solution or 5 years to turn on the solution, it's completely material. We solve blockchain dilemma, you know, and we'll get there as an ecosystem. So these are the kinds of things I think about and I preach. And people don't like that because they're saying, yeah, but when token go up, guys, none of us control that. None of us control it. It's like we all thought when Trump got elected, oh my God, we're in the Giga Chad Bowl. And then look where we're at. They ended all the lawsuits. The president launched a meme coin. He's got World Liberty Finance. He's got all these things tweeting about cryptocurrencies, yet the market's in the toilet. Why? Because macro. There's the trade war going on. It's tariffs everywhere. There's the threat of a Thucydides trap with China. So you could do everything right. You have the best technology, the best adoption plan. You have 10 times the transaction volume this year and be half the price because the macros killed you. You can do everything wrong and fuck everything up. You can stumble onto an elevator that takes you to the moon because the macro is awesome. That was called 2021, where you literally had shit that was everybody knew was shit, but it was worth $5 billion. Why? I don't know. $5 billion. Here we go. Right? As what's your roadmap? We'll figure it out. What's your white paper? We're working on it. You know, but the trading's already started. Here's your $5 billion. So that's the problem with crypto is that, and so what I'd like to do is to live long enough where we get out of that nonsense and we actually have real use and utility, and the ecosystems are actually bounded by progress that's being made. And when you really think about it, you know, if you're an adult in the room, Bitcoin's going to win a big chunk of hearts and minds because governments are buying it and Fortune 500s feel comfortable with it. But you need a compute layer. And Cardano is the default choice for that because it's always been around, always will be around, has a great ecosystem, and it's going to solve a lot of problems. And also by adopting, you can talk to everybody because at midnight, we have the bridges with everybody, Solana and Ethereum and all this other stuff. So you don't really give anything up by going down that road. And nobody will ever get fired for picking ADA. Just like IBM back in the 80s. No one ever got fired for buying an IBM. And that's why they were so successful in that model.
All right. I think we have still
time for one more question.
Yeah, the last question. What advice do you have for people or newbies entering the space right now?
If you are in the space to make money, leave. It is too hard. It is too difficult, too unpredictable to make money in crypto. If you are in the space to solve a problem that affects lots of people, and it's a problem that you think blockchain can solve, stay. So I always tell people this, and they never listen to me because they see all these people making money. But guys, here's the thing about meme coins and NFTs, and here's the thing about Doge and all this other stuff. For you to realize your money, you have to sell it to somebody. So who's the person buying? Maybe you get lucky and it goes up 100x and you sell. Who's that person buying? What are they buying? If you haven't solved any problem, if you haven't resolved something, you haven't created utility, they're buying with the belief they're going to be the one who gets the 100x. and they sell it to a person, and that person is buying with the belief they're going to be the one who gets 100x. How many times do you have to pass the bicycle around before the tires get flat? Okay, and the problem is that that is a game where 99% of the people lose their money in the long term. It doesn't work. But if you're there to solve a problem, you're creating a self-sustaining ecosystem. Like think of bats with Brave. It solves a huge problem. Advertisers would like to micro-target people. I would like to get relevant ads. I don't trust a centralized company with knowing a creepily large amount of information about me. In fact, there were studies showing that Google knows you're pregnant before your parents do. Okay, so maybe, just maybe, that's not good to be in a society where Google knows that much about you. You know, it's like that meme with Mark Zuckerberg. It says, "My dad says that you're a bad guy," and Mark Zuckerberg says he's not your dad. Mark would probably know that, right? Well, crypto solves a huge problem there. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can have micro-targeted ads that are very relevant to you, but you can have no centralized organization that actually knows that information. And you have a circular economy. Who buys the token to facilitate that? Well, the advertiser. I would buy $1 million worth of a token if it meant that I could do impressions to 70 million, 100 million people and get very relevant click-throughs to adopt my products. I'm not buying a token to speculate. I'm buying a token because that's a circular economy. What incentive do you have to share? Well, what if I cut you into 20% of all the revenue and I give you some of the tokens for your data? Suddenly you have far better incentives to share to that ecosystem than you do for Facebook or for Google or for any of these other ad systems. Google and Facebook were built from ads, and they're two of the largest companies in human history. That's one problem. And then we can all understand it. I can explain it. Same for Book.io. Maybe, just maybe, I don't want Jeff Bezos to wake up and take all my books off my Kindle because the authors pissed him off. And the problem is you don't own anything anymore. We live in an ownerless economy. It was like Klaus Schwab, you know, masturbating with sand, saying, "Oh, I just love this. You own nothing and be happy." Environment he's created. But that's what any song, streaming service, you know, any book, Kindle, any video, at any given moment, they can just push a button and you've been disappeared. It doesn't exist. So Book.io says, okay, when you buy it, you have the NFT, you own it. No one can revoke your access to it, and you can resell it to somebody else. So just like when I have a paper book, I can take the paper book, you know, and be like, okay, you know, I really like this Pete guy. He's cool. So here's this book. I give this to you. This was the dominant force of human history for content up until the digital revolution. And then we said, you know what? We're going to convince everybody that it's a better idea that you don't own anything and you're completely at the control of these giant companies that have absolutely nothing in your best interest at heart. So maybe we build a system where we solve that particular problem. Is that useful? Yeah, I'd like to go back to that old world because that old world was intrinsically superior. But I'd like to preserve the digital stuff, the global markets, the 24/7 trading. I'd like to have an unlimited TAM instead of just my neighborhood, have to know the guy, these types of things. Pretty simple. So that is how you make money. And that's how you build things. You build utility, you solve a problem, you're obsessed with that problem, and every person agrees, yeah, actually, that kind of does make sense. We kind of do need something like that because the alternative is we all get fucked. Yeah, why are we getting fucked? Why am I using that old thing? God, I gotta migrate right now. This is a problem. If you can do that, crypto's for you. If your only thing is like just buy token and the next guy's 100x from there, and then that guy's 100x from there, you are in a Ponzi scheme. The problem with crypto is it's the Schrodinger's cat of credibility. It's both credible and not credible at the same time. We coexist with the scams. We coexist with the problems. Algorithmic stablecoins were the phenomenal example of that. Luna was a scam. We all knew it. And I questioned the guys on it. We complained about it. We said, guys, there's no way for this to work. We knew this in 2013. We did BitShares. When we did the models for it, we said if you have a partially collateralized algorithmic stablecoin, it will have a bank run when you have high enough volatility. Talk to Three Arrows Capital guys. Yeah, it'll never happen. And it did. $40 billion is destroyed. But an algorithmic stablecoin is a necessary thing for our industry. Otherwise, all of your stablecoins are going to be CBDCs, light edition. And maybe, just maybe, we don't like the idea that at any given time, a person can push a button and turn your money off. Isn't that the problem we're trying to solve with crypto? So Luna coexists with Jed and MakerDAO and all these other people trying to solve this thing. And it's the same when you talk about NFTs and GameFi. Is all of GameFi a scam? No. Is all of NFTs a scam? No. If I'm a musician and I want to have a relationship with my people attending my concerts and create a legacy and have collectibles and things like that, that is an indispensable tool to build a relationship. Because here's the thing. What if you have a roadie who's gone to 400 of your concerts and they just love you, and when they die, they want to be buried in the Kiss coffin, okay? These guys are like your fan. Wouldn't it be nice to know that, so that when you do that concert, you can invite them backstage to reward them for all of that stuff? Well, if I have an NFT that follows my loyalty to you as a musician and all the things I've done, I now know who that person is, and I can build that relationship with that person, because that person's a super connector, because that person can get their 400 other friends on board with your thing, because that's the only thing they talk about. You run into them, and you're like, hey, boy, you know, that was real crazy, that hurricane that struck. Yeah, that hurricane was real bad that just struck our house. Hey, have you heard of KISS? You know, and that's your guy. You want that guy. You want that guy and the 400 other guys, because that's how you get rich. So if you have a better way of building relationships with them, with targeting them to build networks with them, that makes sense. That's the same space as Dog with Hat. That's the same space as the banana, okay, and Bored Apes and all this other stuff. It's the exact same space. You're Schrodinger's cat of credibility. So all you can control if you're a new entrant in the space is your intention. And if your intention is avarice, you will lose your money. I'll guarantee you that in the long run. If your intention is to solve a problem or be a member of an ecosystem solving a problem, you may not get rich, but at least you'll know that you did something worthwhile with the time that you spent. Because if that problem gets solved, you've solved it for millions to billions of people across the entire space. And being in the space for 15 years, going through all the ups and downs, and believe me, it was real fun to hold ADA at $1.48 and be totally illiquid and watch it fall to 2.5 cents, you know, and go all the way back up and all the way back down. Being the guy that's been broke to a billionaire twice, you know, that's my advice I can give to a new guy entering the entire space.
Charles, thank you very much. Highly appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun.